Hi, I'm Alian, and I'm once again experimenting with microalgae. This week, I am on vacation with my family in Newfoundland. And it's been a really fun trip. We've gone on a bunch of hikes, seen some attractions, and eaten lots of seafood. Now, Newfoundland is home to lots of water, both freshwater and saltwater. And if there's one thing I've learned, is that wherever there is water, there's almost certainly algae to go with it. So because I can't be in my lab today, I thought I'd go on a hunt for algae all across Newfoundland. And I've got my good friend Past Alian here to tell you about it. So I'm going to send it over to him at Deer Lake. Hey, Past Alian here. I am at Deer Lake in western Newfoundland. Now this is the real Deer Lake, but apparently this lake is so popular and so cool that they named the entire town after it. So the entire town around here is also called Deer Lake. Now, the algae in question we're looking for are right here on the edge of this pond. So right here on these rocks, you can see some fibrous green plants that, you guessed it, are a type of algae. Now, you'll notice that these algae are pretty different from the ones I've been growing in my basement. And that's because these are macroalgae, not microalgae. So while you can't see microalgae without a microscope, macroalgae, you can see their entire structure with the human eye. And macroalgae are multicellular, not unicellular, which allows them to have that fibrous shape that you see. Now, these algae are specifically filamentous algae, also known as pond scum. And if you've ever had an aquarium, you might have seen these pop up unwanted in your fish tank. But these can also be found in lakes and rivers like this one, and often attached to rocks like these so that they don't wash away in a fast current. Algae like these are really the base of the lake's ecosystem. They're the bottom of the food chain. They take their energy from the sun, and the fish and other sea animals eat the algae, and then larger predators like bigger fish, birds, and otters eat the fish. So the algae being here is a great indication of a healthy lake ecosystem. Now it's getting a bit rainy here, so I'm going to try and get out of this rain, sending it back to future Alian. Thank you, Past Alian. Now, those were some algae present in freshwater, but Newfoundland happens to border the Atlantic Ocean, which is saltwater. And on my journey, I visited a beach where I found some algae you might not have expected. So I'm going to send it to Past Alian over there to tell you about it. Past Alian is back. Now, I am at a beach that we kind of just found on the side of the road. We stopped here, great views, although very few people. But what it lacks in people, it makes up for by having plenty of seaweed. Now, seaweed, you might be surprised to know, are actually a type of algae. They're macroalgae, like the filamentous algae we saw at the lake earlier. Now you can see behind me there's this massive, mass of seaweed. And I did some digging and I found out that these are specifically vesicled rockweed. They're a type of seaweed that is extremely common to Newfoundland. And the reason they're called rockweed is, well, if I pick this up, you can see that they are attached to the rocks. Right here, if I hold them upside down, they don't fall off. And that's because they keep coming in with a tide. So every time the high tide comes in and then recedes back into low tide, all the seaweed get left on this beach. And they need to be able to stay attached to the rocks instead of just floating around all the time. So they attach to these rocks, and that's why they're called rockweed. And the other part of their name, the vesicled part of their name, that comes from the shape of the seaweed. You can see here in this close-up, they've got these little bulbous appendages to their plants. And those are what are called vesicles. So they're vesicled, they have vesicles, and they attach to rocks, so they are vesicled rockweed. So there you go, vesicled rockweed, a type of algae that you may not have expected to be algae. I'm going to get back in the car and drive to our next spot. Sending it back to future Alian. Thank you again, Past Alian. This is great, honestly. I get to sit back and relax here while he does all the dirty field work. Anyway, one other place I visited here was the Johnson Geo Center, a museum dedicated to the unique geology of Newfoundland. Aside from all the incredible rock history, some of which is billions of years old, I also learned about the significance of algae to the early Earth. Microalgae and their close cousins cyanobacteria appeared on Earth more than 3.5 billion years ago. They were the first organisms that could do photosynthesis, not only turning the sun's energy into food, but also, crucially, producing oxygen for the first time on Earth. That oxygen they produced made its way into the sky, where it was present for the newly evolving animals that eventually made it onto land a few 100 million years later. And that same oxygen is literally part of the air we breathe today. We can see evidence of these ancient algae in sedimentary rocks like limestone and shale, where they've been preserved for upwards of 500 million years. It's incredible to me that the same algae I'm growing in my basement have existed on Earth for billions of years and have had such a great impact to be in the oxygen that I'm breathing right now. So that's all I've got for this week. Hope you enjoyed this quick tour of the algae of Newfoundland. Special thanks, of course, to past Elion doing all that field work, and my entire family for putting up with me diverting us while we were driving to go examine algae. Next week, I'll be back to experimenting at my lab, so if you want to see more of my antics when I'm actually growing the algae, follow me on LinkedIn, subscribe on YouTube, and I will see you in the next one.